I want to talk about yearning, not the cute romantic version that people post on TikTok with like the picture of the notebook, but like the real kind, the kind that forever sits in your chest, the kind that doesn't always have a clear answer. Yearning is one of those feelings that we don't really get taught how to handle. We either glorify it or we tell people to move on. But nobody really explains how complicated it actually is. For me, yearning has showed up in a lot of different ways. Yearning for a person, yearning for a version of myself that I used to be, yearning for a moment that already passed, or a future I can almost see but I can't quite touch yet. And the hardest part about it is yearning isn't always bad. And that's what makes it so confusing. There's something beautiful about wanting deeply. It shows you cared. It means you felt something real. It means your heart was open enough to attach to hope and to imagine. Yearning is quite literally proof that you are alive. But at the same time, yearning can quietly wreck you if you don't know or you don't learn how to respect it. And I think a lot of us grow up thinking that if we want something badly enough, that just means we should chase it at all costs. And that yearning is a sign to push harder, reach further, hold tighter, you know? But sometimes yearning isn't always considered a green light. Sometimes it's just information. Or your heart saying, this mattered to me, but not, this needs to come back in my life for me to feel whole. And that distinction took me a very long time to learn. There were many moments in my life where yearning made me hold on longer than I should have. I replayed conversations, I reread old messages, I imagined different outcomes where things worked out perfectly if I had just said this one thing or done this differently. And in those moments, yearning didn't necessarily feel poetic. It felt more like I was living in my head. And that's the dark side. When it pulls you away from the present and right now, when it turns your memories into a trap or convinces you that your past or your future is so much more meaningful than right here, right now. But here's the part people don't say enough. You don't have to kill yearning to heal. You don't have to shame yourself for missing somebody. You don't have to rush yourself into indifference or pretend you don't care when you very clearly do. What you have to learn is how to respect yearning instead of letting it control your whole life. Something that helped me a lot is changing my perspective. I started to respect that, yes, this is how I feel, and stop fighting against it. I stopped telling myself I was weak for feeling this way. I stopped judging myself for missing people who mattered to me. And instead I started asking myself better questions. Like, why does this feeling keep showing up? What is this pointing toward? And like, is it asking me to go backwards? Or is it just asking me to understand something about myself and who I am? And a lot of the time, yearning isn't necessarily really about the person or the thing we think it is. It's more about what the person represented. We like to tie emotions with memories. So like safety, connection, hope, feeling understood, feeling chosen, to name a few. And when you see it that way, yearning becomes so much less scary. It sort of turns into a teacher instead of a punishment. But let's be real, even when you might understand it, it'll still hurt. There will be nights where it'll show up uninvited. There will be quiet moments where it'll sneak in, and times when you say you're doing fine and suddenly you feel this big ache in your chest. And in those moments, the temptation is to feed it, to reach out, to fantasize, to sit in the sadness until it becomes your whole identity. And that's where, like I said earlier, respect comes in. Respecting it means embracing it, letting it exist without necessarily obeying it. It means saying, yeah, I see you, I feel you, but you don't get to run my life or ruin my day. It means allowing yourself to feel deeply without letting that feeling decide your next move. And yes, that balance is really hard. And nobody is perfect and nobody nails it perfectly. There were times I disrespected my own yearning by just trying to numb it and distract myself, avoid the silence and reflection. And there were other times I disrespected it by letting it drown me, romanticizing the pain, turning the longing into my personality, and convincing myself that suffering meant I was loving correctly. And I think that's what a lot of us do, but obviously neither of those help. What helped me the most was slowing it down and realizing that it doesn't necessarily mean you are incomplete. You can yearn for something or somebody and still build a life that doesn't revolve around its absence. You can miss somebody and you can still choose yourself. You can still honor what was without living there, if that makes sense. This was a big shift for me. Instead of asking, why me? How do I stop? Start asking, how can I carry this feeling without letting it break me? And the answer isn't always clear, but it showed up very quiet. It looked like routines, showing up for myself, letting time pass without really rushing it, and accepting that some feelings don't need fixing. They just need space. And over time, the quote-unquote yearning will change. It'll soften up and become less sharp, less desperate. It's not going to just vanish, but it'll stop owning me. And I think that's the part I want people to understand. That, yes, yearning doesn't make you weak, but letting it replace your whole life will. And respecting yearning means allowing yourself to feel deeply while still choosing growth, presence, and forward movement. It means understanding that some things aren't meant to return. They aren't meant to be. They're meant to be a lesson and shape you. There is also another side that doesn't get talked about enough. The way it can quietly shape your whole identity if you're not paying attention. When you yearn for something long enough, it starts to color everything. your decisions, your mood, even the way you wake up in the morning, the way you go to sleep at night. And oftentimes you don't really notice it happening, especially at first. It just feels like a constant low hum in the background of your life. Like you're always waiting for something, a sign, a message, a moment where it all just kind of clicks back into place. And that waiting can be so exhausting. There were times where I wasn't fully present with the people in front of me because part of me was mentally somewhere else, replaying memories, images, different futures, wondering what could have been if timing, choices, or the circumstances were different. And yearning can make you romanticize what is missing and minimize what is right in front of you. And that's one of the sneakiest, most dangerous part about it, because when you're yearning, your mind won't play fair. It will edit the past and highlight the good and blur out the bad. It'll turn people into symbols instead of real, flawed humans. And when that happens, you're not yearning for a reality anymore. You're yearning for a version of something that never fully, truly existed. And I had to sit with that truth for a while, and it wasn't easy. There were moments where I had to admit to myself that part of what I missed wasn't the person or the situation. It was how it made me feel about myself during the time. More hopeful, more alive, more certain. And that realization hurt in so many different ways. Because it meant the answer wasn't, I'm getting it back. The answer was, become that version of you again. Yearning also has this way of slowing time down. The days feel longer. The silence feels longer. Everything gets louder, and you notice gaps more than presence. And if you're not careful, you're going to start measuring your life by what it lacks instead of what it holds. I've done that countless times. I've woken up and immediately felt behind, not because my life was objectively bad, but because it didn't match the image I was holding in my head. Like I knew I could do better. And that's when everything became heavy. Like carrying something you can't put down because you don't know who you are without it. And here's something I had to learn the hard way. Yearning doesn't always fade on its own. It's not just gonna, like I said before, disappear. Sometimes it'll linger because we keep feeding it, not intentionally, but habitually. Checking old photos, revisiting old places, letting our thoughts spiral unchecked late at night, asking the what ifs, and not really having any real answers. And none of that makes you weak necessarily, but it doesn't mean you have to, it does mean you have to be honest with yourself about whether your yearning is actually helping you grow or keeping you stuck. For me, the turning point kind of wasn't forcing myself to let go, but it was realizing I needed to punish myself for feeling this way. I stopped seeing it as an enemy, and I started seeing it more as a signal that I care deeply, a signal that I am capable of attachment, a signal that I want meaning, not just a distraction. And once I saw it that way, the feeling, again, didn't disappear. But it stopped feeling like I was running from it. I learned how to sit with it without immediately reacting, to let it pass through instead of pulling me under. And that changed everything. Thank you so much for giving me your time and sitting with the feeling that most people try to run from. Thank you for allowing space for something quiet and complicated and human. I know this topic can be very heavy, and I know it can feel isolating, and I know sometimes it feels like nobody else talks about it honestly. And if this video made you feel seen, even for a moment, then I'm glad I shared it. I'm glad I put it out into the world. You don't need to rush your healing. You don't need to erase your feelings to grow. And you don't need to harden your heart to move forward. You're allowed to feel deeply and still build life that keeps going. I'm proud of you for listening. I'm proud of you for staying present. And I'm grateful you are here. Thank you again. And as always, stay rolly.